Hello, welcome again. I'm Pauline from Pauline's Quilters World, better known as PQW. I want to share with you how to make a lovely bag like I have here out of 2.5-inch wide strips. We can make them any size we want. You can make them as deep as you want, as wide as you want. You can make the straps as long as you want and have fun making them. You could make them for a shopping bag. You could even make it smaller for a little over-the-shoulder bag. Once you learn the technique, you can make any shape you like. But I've made mine from 2.5-inch wide strips that I cut myself out of 2 different fabrics. But you could use a jelly roll. Very easy to use a jelly roll, and they're all cut ready, available for us with beautiful, beautiful colours. Or you could use a selection of colours. As I said, I've used 2 different prints in this one. The one I'm going to work on in the lesson, I've only used 1 fabric and then used a bit of a contrast in the handle. So the option is yours. There's no rules to it, so just whatever is going to suit. Now, in the pattern that we have for this, it'll tell you how many strips to cut for a particular size bag, so do look at that. And then we're going to need to join those strips together with a diagonal seam. So here we've got 2 of these strips joined together, just simply by putting one on top of the other, and I've sewn from this, where these 2 pieces of fabric come together, I'll just shift this pin, where these 2 pieces of fabric have come together, right across to where they intersect here. Once we do that, we're going to trim this back to a 1/4-inch seam, which we'll do now. I just usually use my scissors. Trim this back, and I find a diagonal join will sit much flatter for you than what a straight join will. Once you get that done, just press the seam to one direction. So if you're going to make a large bag, you'll join all of those strips together to be one long piece. When I first started making my bag, I only had 1/2 metre of this print fabric, and I didn't know whether the bag would be deep enough for me. So I didn't at that stage join the pink onto the end of these floral strips because I hadn't made my mind up. So you can always join more on as you start to work on it if it's not coming out to the size you want. So as I said, no rules. I do like to nip these little end bits off here so that they don't get in the road, just to make it tidy. Now once we've done that, we then need to have wadding inside here, or batting. I love to use the pre-cut Hobbs Heirloom double-sided fusible batting, and this is the one I've got showing up the front here on the table. I love it because it sits nicely. It gives the bags nice body, nice strength. It just really works so well for me, and it just goes through the machine beautifully. Some of the pre-cut waddings I've found, they make your machine skip stitches because they're too dense. This one's not. It really works beautifully. But we'll talk about the stitching when we go to the machine. So what we're going to do, just unpeel this and you'll realise that it's stuck together. But the nice thing about it, if you've seen me use this before, I always do this to prove to people that none of the fuse sticks to the base of your iron, so you can't get in a mess with it. Now, we don't want the batting right up against the edge of the fabric, and yes, I've still got the selvage on there, but that's okay. Just have this about 1/2 inch from the edge of the selvage to the edge of the wadding, because we want to be able to fold this over. And I'm just going to leave that selvage on there, it doesn't matter. But before I fold it over, what I'm going to do is fold this over and just press it in half, the first little bit. I'll just pull this apart now. Okay, because what I want to do is I don't want to start stitching this with it this full width because it's too bulky where we start putting the base of the bag together. So folding it in half, we're now going to taper this down a little bit. So there's not going to be so much bulk. So you would do this taping at the beginning of the base of the bag, and you would taper it down when you come to the end of making the bag. because that you'd need to reduce that bulk. So we're just going to take, and there's no real measurement here, but it usually comes to about 1/2 inch that I'm taking off right up to the top. So now, I'm now going to fold this side in and press. And I'll fold the other side in and press till they meet exactly. And then I fold this top over, but I'll just snip this selvage off now, just to get rid of a little bit more of the bulk. Now when I fold this over, I'm going to use the Roxanne glue basted because I want it to hold there beautifully for me. Just little dots of the glue. Oops, mine's a little bit clogged up. So it just doesn't want to come out, so I just need to put a pin down in here. So just little dots of that glue. So now I like to use the awl because it just saves me getting the glue all over everything. Just fold that top back. Then I will press that to set the glue really quickly. So that's going to be the start. Now, once we start putting this together, because we're going to go to the sewing machine next, but if you notice I haven't ironed this fusible batting on, and I don't need to, because as I sew it's just going to start to grab to the fabric. I'm not going to spend time ironing this on to about 30 strips of fabric. It takes too long. So I just lay it down so it lays in the centre. Do what I've just done here. Now we're going to, once we go to the machine, we're going to use the Jelly Roll Sasha tool. Now I've designed this tool to aid us at the sewing machine. Now if I wasn't going to be using this, if this was not in the equation, you would need to now come down and fold all of this and press it. Then you would need to fold it over and pin it or use the clips. I use the tool, and this is why I designed the tool, so I can get rid of all of those other steps. Just makes it so neat and so easy, and it avoids the string or the cord that we're going to make up. It eliminates the stretching, so it really helps me gratefully with doing this. Now I want to use a really good quality needle when I stitch because I want to penetrate through the bulk. So I'm going to use the titanium top stitch needles, size 1280, and I find these just work beautifully. They penetrate all through the thickness. So when we're doing our straight stitching here to make our cord up, when we come back to construct the bag, we're using a zigzag. I just find when we get to the zigzag, if we don't use a good quality needle, that's where we can get the skip stitches. So that's why I really recommend these needles. They're brilliant. We need the glue because we're going to use this quite a lot as we start to construct the bag. I'm going to use the awl at the sewing machine quite a bit because it's going to help me manoeuvre things through and keep everything in line. Then when we come to make the handles, we're going to use these green Sasha tools, and I call them the strappers, the bag strappers, because they're going to help us make the beautiful straps on our bag. So you don't need a lot of tools, but if you get the right tools together, the job's going to be really, really easy for you, and you're going to get a beautiful finish on your bag. Now you can use any type of thread that you want. I like to use a contrast thread when I do the stitching and the zigzag. On this one that we're going to make up, I've got a lovely variegated thread on my machine, on the bobbin and on the top, because I want the same thread top and bottom. So what we're going to do now is go to the sewing machine and set it up and explain to you a little bit about the stitching to make up the cord. Once we make the cord up, we're then going to start constructing the bag and showing you how easy it is to make a beautiful accessory for you to take out shopping. So let's go to the sewing machine. Right, let's set up the sewing machine. You can notice that I've got the sew slip mat on the bed of the machine, and I'll always recommend have one of these on the bed of your machine because this just helps everything slide through so beautifully. So you can get these or any of these tools from our website. I'm going to use the jelly roll sasher, and the blue one is the one for the 2.5 inch wide strips. If you've got the yellow ones or any other coloured sasher tool, they won't work because we need this thick opening here, the wide opening, to get the bulk of this 2.5 inch wide strip and the wadding to go through nicely. Now I'm going to have the awl to help me get started and through the process. I'm going to advise one or another different feet that we could use. I personally like to use the open toe foot, the one that has nothing in the front, that's completely opened, and I'm going to move my needle over to get an exact 1/4 inch seam. Or you could use a 1/4 inch foot. It's totally up to you which one you would prefer to use, but I'm going to use the open toe foot. I'm going to show you how I move my needle over to get an exact 1/4 inch. So to do that, I use just a regular small ruler. And this is the ruler I've used to cut my strips, so I know I'm going to be taking back the right seam allowance that my 1/4 inch ruler has allowed me. So I'm going to put my pressure foot down on top of the ruler. Just make sure it's lined up exactly at the edge. So use your tapered tailor's awl to run it up there so that you get these edges lined up exactly. Then I move my needle position over so it's exactly on the 1/4 inch line of my ruler. Just need to go back one, I've gone too far. Now I have the exact 1/4 inch that's been allowed by my ruler. That way I know it'll be all accurate and neat. So we'll just take the ruler away. Now the other thing I use when I get started is I have a little starter piece. This is just a piece of fabric folded over with some wadding in it. Because what we're going to do is, with the sasher tool and with our fabric that we prepared before, I do suggest that you put your roller batting in a basket to one side and your strip of fabric in a separate basket. Otherwise they're both going to get all tangled up, and just let them be down on the floor alongside you. We've got our folded piece that we prepared earlier. We're going to put it into the tool, up. I'll just see that you can see this, up and back down. Now we're going to then pull the tool down about 2 or 3 inches. Then we're going to roll this piece over. Oops, I'll just use this tool to help me. Roll it over so the edges are level. Put your pressure foot down. And I like to have this starter piece because if I don't, because the foot is, the open toe foot of my machine is covering the feed dogs, but it can be hard to get started, particularly if you use the 1/4 inch foot. They won't cover the feed dogs. It's hard for your feed dogs to get traction on the fabric to feed it through if you don't use the starter piece. So I'm going to lift the foot up again, put my starter piece under here, foot down, have your needle in the down position and change your stitch length up to about 3. So we're going to put my stitch length up to 3. Because we're going through this bulk, if we leave it on our normal 2.5, you'll find you'll get a very, very tiny stitch. So now I'm going to start sewing onto that starter piece. So when I get to my piece, and it's not going to feed through, so I'm going to need to lift this up and help it through there a little bit. So now we're going to pull this starter piece. So now we've got started, and you can see that my foot is against the edge of the fabric, and now my needle's in the position I want it. You can see that we've got the sasher tool there. So now what I'm going to do, as I sew, I'm going to fold in and pull the tool down. That keeps everything in line for me. I'm going to use the awl to help me. And I'm going to sew down the side. and off we go. So when we get down to the edge, when you start getting close to that tool, fold again, pull and roll over. And it's a very simple process, and you'll just keep going until you get the whole amount of strips that you've joined together into be one long piece of cord. And you can see the mat's helping me immensely be able to pull this around. And you can see that using this awl, it's like a third hand. It allows me just to hold everything in place while I stitch. Now this will take you a little while because, you know, you've probably got 20, 30, 40, it depends what size bag you're making. You'll have lots of strips to stitch like this. But it's very relaxing. Just sit there and fold, pull with the tool and stitch. And you know, if you've ever made a jelly roll rug, it's exactly the same as making a jelly roll. And like your jelly roll rug, you can make so many things with 2.5 inch wide strips. A lot of people ask me and send messages on our YouTube channel, what can I do with 2.5 inch wide strips? And that's why I'm doing all of these sort of things, just to give you ideas. You could make a backpack, you could make a vest out of these strips. There's so much you can do with them. So just keep pulling that wadding, and you can notice that I suggested that we don't need to iron it, but it's just sitting there beautifully. It's not stretching as I pull down with the sasha tool. And you can just go off into another little whirl when you're doing this. It's so rewarding, and you'll have something nice at the end. I took my bag shopping the other day, and I don't know how many people stopped me and asked me, where did I get my shopping bag from? Because they're sturdy. I just take it to the grocery store and put all my little bits and pieces in and get lovely comments on it. Now, you can see here I've started to fold it a bit wrong, so I've just pulled the tool back a bit. Bring it in so that it stays basically the same measurement on both sides. If it's a little bit off, it won't matter. Just come back up and get the edges level. And you'll notice that that needle, I'm not skipping any stitches, it's just sewing beautifully. My open toe foot sitting right on the edge of the fabric, my needle's in the 1/4 inch position. I just find I get a much neater seam with an open toe foot than what I get with the 1/4 inch foot. But if you've got a 1/4 inch foot and you prefer to use that, you definitely use that. So I'll just keep sewing, and then the next step I'll go back to the work table. I'm going to show you how to start making the base of the bag. Then we'll come back to the sewing machine and start stitching the bag up. So keep sewing your cord, keep up with me, and we'll show you the next step very soon. So you can see my starter piece there where I started to be able to get traction to start stitching this little bulky narrow edge here. So we just need to cut that off. Okay, so use that every time you start when you've got bulk under the needle. It'll help you immensely. So we've got all our cord made. I do suggest you roll it into a ball. Otherwise, you could have this cord running absolutely everywhere, and you don't want to trip over it. You don't want to get caught around the leg of your chair where you're sewing or anything. So I always roll it up into a little ball. Now, to get the base of your bag, it's all about how big do you want your bag to be? What size do you want it to be? So what I've done here, this is the base of my bag. So I decide by this first piece of fabric that I put down, how long is this going to be? This will determine how big the base will turn out, which in return will give you the size of your base that you can build your sides on. Now, building the sides is very, very easy. The tricky part is when we start sewing is getting around these first couple of curves. Once we get the first couple of corners done, it's very easy from then on. It's not hard at all. It gets easier and easier with every row of stitching you're doing. Some things get harder and harder as things get bigger. This gets easier. So I've got a distance of about 9 inches here. So what we do is lay this out and get your measurement. So let's say this is 9 inches. What I'm going to do now is use my Roxanne glue, because if I went to the machine, and because what we want to do is we want to curve this around so the two strips sit together. Now, if I just went to my machine and started sewing this, I'm going to have my fingers in very close to the needle to get around this corner, which is a bit dangerous. So I don't like to do that. So what I do is I use the glue and I glue the first couple of rounds. So when I go to the machine to start stitching, my fingers don't go near the needle. So once you get your measurement, and work with the pattern that we have for this to give you different measurements and different amount of strips and all of the things you need. So there's my glue. Now I could just leave this like such, and you can see this is our tapered end here. You can see it's half the width of this piece. I could leave this just pinned into my ironing board or pinned into a firm surface and let the glue dry naturally. But usually I just touch it with a hot iron to set the glue, just to cut down on the waiting time. Remembering the glue's not going to get onto your iron and make a mess. And then when we get up to the corner, oops, just need a little bit more glue. And if you noticed, when I started gluing, I've got the flat side to the centre, not the open side. I like the open side sitting to the outside. But this one, the open edge is sitting to the outside. The one I'm going to work on, this one, I'm going to reverse it around so that undo this, just so you can see the difference when we get them constructed. I'm going to have the open side against the open side. And you'll be able to see the difference when I compare the two at the end of the lesson. So we're just going to put this down. This is just a little bit of the fiddly, but it's worth taking your time at this stage. It's all about the preparation work makes the job a lot easier. Just let that stick together. So you're just going to go and do that for your first couple of rounds, and then we'll start stitching. So we'll just do this one. And you might just have to hold the iron on it for a few minutes to get that glue to, because there's not a lot of glue going between those two pieces. There we are. Now we're going to come around this corner, glue up here, and around this corner. And you might like to just do these first couple of rounds, iron it, and then go away and have a cold drink or something and put some pins into the ironing board while this glue really does set. Just give it a few minutes to really make sure it's settled in there nicely. So we just continue on gluing it. And then in the second part of the how to make these bags, we'll show you how to start stitching. So keep gluing, pin it into the ironing board. I'll meet you back at the sewing machine and we'll set it up to start doing our zigzag and constructing our beautiful bag. So till the next lesson, get your homework done. See you for now.